The cafeteria is a sea of noise. Laughter erupts like geysers from crowded tables. Friends lean in, sharing secrets whispered over trays of lukewarm pizza plastic-wrapped sandwiches. But for one student, the sound is muffled, as if listening from underwater. He sits alone at a table meant for 8, his presence a void in the bustling room. His shoulders are slumped, a silent surrender to the invisible wall that separates him from everyone else. He doesn't look up. He doesn't dare to. His world has shrunk to the perimeter of his plastic tray, a small, lonely island in an ocean of connection he cannot reach. A group of boys walks past his table, and one of them deliberately stumbles, sending a spray of soda across his jeans. They laugh, a harsh, jagged sound that cuts through the din. He doesn't react. He just sits there, feeling the cold, sticky liquid seep into the fabric, a physical manifestation of the shame that already soaks him to the bone. No one says anything. No one intervenes. He waits for the bell to ring, the piercing shriek a welcome escape. The walk to his next class is a gauntlet. He keeps his head down. The snickers follow like a shadow. This silence is not peaceful. It is a roaring emptiness. Physical wounds heal. A black eye fades from purple to green to yellow, then disappears. A scraped knee forms a scab, becomes a faint silvery scar, a story you might tell later with a shrug. But the wounds inflicted by relentless bullying are not so easily seen, and they rarely fade with time. They are the bruises on the soul, the deep internal lacerations that fester in the dark. Words like freak, loser, weirdo become a constant internal monologue, a voice that whispers self-hatred long after the bullies have gone home. These injuries shape how a person sees themselves and the world. The human mind is not built to withstand constant cruelty and exclusion. It begins to break down. Anxiety becomes a constant companion, a knot of dread each morning. Depression descends like a thick fog, muting the colors of the world, making joy feel distant. This psychological pain is far more debilitating than any physical injury, creating a prison of despair with no escape. This invisible suffering is the true tragedy of bullying. Actions have consequences. No one simply snaps. A breaking point is not a sudden event, but the culmination of a long, slow burn. It is the final collapse of a structure weakened over time, piece by piece. For a bullied student, every day is another blow. Imagine a dam holding back a reservoir. Pain, humiliation, rage. Each insult is a crack. Each act of exclusion widens it. Each time an adult looks the other way, another fissure appears. For months, even years, the dam holds, until the structure can no longer bear the weight. Powerlessness takes hold. They try to ignore it, but the cruelty follows them. Fight back, overpowered or blamed. Tell an adult. Just ignore them. Stand up for yourself. When options fail, the mind turns to extreme, desperate solutions. Powerlessness is replaced by a dark fantasy of ultimate power. The narrative shifts from victim to avenger. Actions have consequences. Understanding this slow burn is not to excuse the final act, but to recognize the long, painful road that leads to it. Consider the story of a boy we'll call Alex. He was not born an outcast. He was bright. He was curious. He loved drawing fantastical creatures in his notebooks. In middle school, his quiet nature and art made him a target. It started small, snatched drawings, passed around, met with jeers. Each incident, a tiny cut. The cuts never stopped. His locker defaced, rumors spread online. The abuse followed him home. He stared at blank pages, creativity extinguished by fear. He ate lunch in a bathroom stall. He feigned sickness to stay home. He sought help. Be the bigger person. The bullying became subtle, harder to prove. Smiles when watched, whispers when backs turned. Alex learned no one could or would make it stop. He was on his own. The 1,000 cuts bled him of his confidence, his joy, his sense of self. Quiet, simmering rage filled him, rage that frightened even him. It's the untold story in schools everywhere, a slow-motion tragedy built one cut at a time. Actions have consequences. It is crucial to draw a clear line between explaining the origins of pain and excusing the act of violence. To trace the path of bullying and isolation is not to absolve responsibility. Violence is never the answer. The act of taking innocent lives is a monstrous tragedy. There is no justification. Understanding the why must not diminish the horror of the what. Ignore the why. Repeat the cycle. Label them incomprehensible evil, and we learn nothing. Explanation is a tool for prevention. It lets us see patterns and recognize red flags. Understand how a hurting child can become a violent one. As with an epidemic, we find sources, study spread, and contain, not to excuse, but to eradicate. The source: unchecked cruelty, social isolation, and failures to protect. Seeking to understand pain does not diminish guilt. It broadens responsibility to bullies, bystanders, and adults who failed to act. Explanation is a call to accountability, difficult and painful, but the way to a future where agony no longer leads to tragedy. Every action, no matter how small, sets off a chain reaction. A single cruel word can be that stone. The splash is the immediate hurt. The bully gains power and approval. Bystanders learn silence is safer. Cruelty becomes permissible, kindness a risk. Aggression normalizes. The target is dehumanized. Treated as less than human, they may lose empathy for themselves and others. Isolation robs the connections that foster compassion. The final tragic link is often horrific violence. It is the ultimate consequence of smaller actions. The boy tripped in the hall, the girl whose secrets were shared. The student mocked for being different. The silence of friends, the inaction of teachers, the laughter of the crowd. These links give the chain its strength and length. Actions have consequences. But this also means we have the power to break the chain. We do not have to wait for tragedy to strike before we decide to act. Prevention does not begin with metal detectors. It begins in the cafeteria, the hallways, the classrooms. It begins with the choice to be kind. A smile, a hello, an invitation to join a conversation. Imagine the student sitting alone. Now imagine someone sits down beside them. A simple talk about class or a movie. The dynamic shifts. The invisible wall is breached. Connection replaces taunts. This act tells bullies, this person is one of us. It tells the lonely student, you matter. You are seen. Actions have consequences, and kindness can prevent tragedy. Don't laugh at cruel jokes. Don't forward humiliating memes. Tell a teacher what you saw. Be an upstander, not a bystander. Every student, every teacher, every parent can add a drop of kindness. Enough drops will turn the tide. Build schools that are communities of compassion. Look up. See the person sitting alone. Extend a hand. Let our legacy be hallways, filled with the life-saving hum of everyday kindness.